Motivation gets you started. Habits keep you going. A cinematic YouTube narration inspired by Jim Rohn. There comes a moment in life, usually late at night, when the noise finally fades, and a man is left alone with the sound of his own thoughts. Not the thoughts he shows the world, not the confident voice he uses at work, not the version of himself that smiles at family dinners and says, "Everything's fine," but the quieter voice underneath all of it. The dangerous one, the honest one, the voice that asks, "What happened to me?" Because somewhere between responsibilities, monthly bills, unfinished dreams, and years that disappeared faster than expected, many people slowly become strangers to themselves. Not in one dramatic collapse, but in tiny invisible ways. They stop reading, stop training, stop trying, stop believing they still have time. And what makes it worse is that nobody notices. The world rarely notices slow self-destruction, especially when you still go to work, still pay the bills, still answer messages, still survive. But survival is not the same thing as living. And deep down, you know that. That's why this quote hits harder than people realize. Motivation is what gets you started. Habit is what keeps you going. Simple words, but hidden inside them is one of the most uncomfortable truths about human life. Because motivation is emotional, and emotions are unreliable. Some mornings you wake up inspired. You feel ready, focused, certain. You promise yourself, this time will be different. But then life happens. Fatigue, stress, rejection, unexpected expenses, arguments, disappointment, bad sleep, another exhausting Monday. And suddenly the fire disappears. Not because you're weak, because you're human. Most people spend their entire lives waiting to feel ready, waiting for motivation, waiting for clarity, waiting for confidence, waiting for the perfect moment. And while they wait, their life quietly slips through their hands. Days become months, months become years. Then one morning they look in the mirror and realize they've become older, but not wiser, busy, but unfulfilled, connected to everyone, but emotionally alone. That realization is brutal, because aging itself is not what scares people most. It's wasted potential. It's the fear that maybe you were capable of becoming someone greater, but never stayed consistent long enough to meet that person. And consistency is where most dreams go to die. Not because people lack intelligence, not because they lack talent, but because repetition feels boring. Human psychology is strange. We romanticize dramatic change. We love emotional speeches, transformation videos, big announcements. I'm changing my life starting tomorrow. But real transformation rarely feels dramatic. Usually, it feels invisible, quiet, repetitive, even disappointing. A man goes to the gym for 2 weeks. No visible change. He starts reading every morning. Nothing magical happens. He saves a little money. Still feels financially trapped. He wakes up earlier. Still anxious. And because humans are emotionally driven, we often quit before life has time to reward us. That is the tragedy of modern life. People worship intensity, but ignore consistency. And intensity without consistency changes nothing. You can feel motivated for one night and still destroy your future through repeated daily neglect. That's the part nobody wants to hear. Your future is not built by your biggest decisions. It's built by your repeated behaviors. Tiny ones. The invisible routines nobody applauds. The alarm you obey when nobody's watching. The workout you complete even when exhausted. The money you don't spend. The anger you control. the book you read instead of scrolling endlessly through other people's lives. Habits are terrifying because they expose the truth. They reveal who you really are, not who you pretend to be, not who you want to become, but who you repeatedly choose to be, every single day. And most people don't actually have bad intentions. They have undisciplined patterns. There's a difference. A man may genuinely love his family, while slowly destroying himself through stress, overeating, alcohol, emotional suppression, and exhaustion. A person may sincerely want peace, while feeding their mind constant negativity every day. A father may want to inspire his children, while secretly feeling numb inside. Because humans are creatures of repetition. Eventually, whatever you repeat becomes your identity. This is why habits matter more than motivation. Motivation creates a moment. Habits create a life. And life is not shaped in giant cinematic breakthroughs. It is shaped in ordinary Tuesdays. That's where destiny hides. Not in massive life-changing moments, but in the quiet decisions nobody celebrates. Especially the decisions made when you don't feel like continuing. Because discipline is not about feeling powerful. It's about acting despite emotional resistance. And emotional resistance never disappears completely. That's another uncomfortable truth. Many people believe disciplined individuals are somehow emotionally different. They imagine successful people wake up energized every morning. But often, they don't. They simply stop negotiating with themselves. That changes everything. The average person asks, "How do I feel today?" The disciplined person asks, "What must be done regardless of how I feel?" Those are two completely different lives. One is controlled by emotion. The other is guided by identity. And identity is more powerful than motivation. Because when behavior becomes identity, consistency becomes natural. A man who says, "I'm trying to work out," will eventually quit. A man who says, "I am someone who trains," behaves differently. A person trying to save money struggles emotionally. A person who identifies as disciplined sees sacrifice differently. Identity changes interpretation. Suddenly, discomfort stops feeling like punishment and starts feeling like proof. Proof that you are becoming someone stronger. But this transformation is painfully slow. Too slow for most people. That's why many never experience it. They quit during the invisible stage. The stage where effort shows no visible reward. The stage where loneliness becomes loud. Where doubt whispers, "This isn't working." Where old habits call your name like old addictions. And sometimes, the hardest part is not failure. It's exhaustion. Emotional exhaustion. The kind adults rarely talk about honestly. Because by your 30s, 40s, 50s, life stops feeling theoretical. You've already experienced betrayal, loss, financial fear, regret, disappointment. Maybe your body hurts more than it used to. Maybe sleep feels heavier. Maybe you achieved things you once dreamed about and still feel strangely empty afterward. That emptiness confuses people because society teaches achievement, but rarely teaches meaning. So people spend decades climbing ladders, only to discover the ladder was leaning against the wrong wall. And when that realization arrives, many collapse internally, not publicly, silently. That's the dangerous kind of suffering. Silent suffering. The kind hidden behind functioning routines. A man continues working, while emotionally disconnected from himself. A woman continues caring for everyone else, while secretly feeling invisible. Someone keeps smiling socially, while privately wondering if life will ever feel meaningful again. And in those moments, motivation disappears completely. Because motivation depends heavily on emotion. But habits can survive emotional darkness. That's why habits save lives. Literally, when grief comes, habits protect structure. When anxiety comes, habits protect stability. When motivation dies, habits carry you forward mechanically until your spirit returns. That's the hidden power people underestimate. Habits reduce the chaos of human emotion. They become anchors. And the older you become, the more valuable emotional stability becomes. Not excitement, stability, peace, self-respect, inner order. Because eventually people realize a chaotic mind creates a painful life, even if you appear successful externally. And modern life constantly attacks inner peace. Notifications, comparison, financial pressure, bad news, endless distraction. The average person consumes more stimulation in one day than previous generations consumed in months. No wonder people feel mentally exhausted. The brain was never designed for endless emotional interruption. And distraction destroys consistency. Not dramatically, quietly. 5 wasted minutes become hours. Hours become years. One day you realize you spent half your life reacting, instead of intentionally living. That realization hurts, especially for men, because many men are raised to suppress emotion, not understand it. They learn how to provide, but not how to process loneliness. They learn how to survive, but not how to feel internally at peace. So they carry silent pressure for years, trying to stay strong, trying not to burden anyone, trying to maintain control. But eventually, unprocessed emotion leaks into behavior. Anger, addiction, withdrawal, numbness, self-destruction. Not because they are evil, because pain always seeks an exit. And habits determine whether that exit becomes healing or destruction. That is why your daily rituals matter more than your temporary emotions. A lonely man who walks every morning, reads, trains, reflects, and protects his mind will slowly rebuild himself. Not instantly, slowly. And that slowness frustrates modern people. Because social media has poisoned expectations. Everyone wants transformation without repetition, confidence without discomfort, wisdom without suffering, peace without discipline. But life does not work that way. Nature itself doesn't work that way. Trees grow slowly. Mountains form slowly. Character develops slowly. The deepest things in life always require time. And time is the one thing people suddenly realize they cannot control. That realization becomes sharper with age, especially after 40. You begin noticing how quickly years disappear. Parents age, children grow, friends drift away, bodies change, and suddenly the future no longer feels infinite. That awareness can either destroy a person or awaken them. Because there is something strangely powerful about realizing time is limited. It forces honesty. You stop pretending certain habits are harmless. You stop lying to yourself about wasted energy. You stop believing you can endlessly delay your real life. One day becomes, if not now, when? That question changes people. Because deep down, most adults already know what they need to do. The problem is not information. The problem is confrontation. Confronting the gap between who you are and who you could become. That gap creates suffering, especially when ignored for too long. You can feel it during quiet nights, during long drives, during exhausted mornings before work. A subtle grief, the grief of unrealized potential. And yet, there's something hopeful hidden inside that pain, because regret itself proves awareness. It means a deeper part of you is still alive, still fighting, still refusing to completely surrender. That part matters. Protect it, because many people lose it entirely. They become emotionally numb, comfortable but spiritually empty, alive physically, but absent internally. And numbness is dangerous because it feels stable, but it slowly kills meaning. Humans need meaning more than pleasure. That is one of the greatest psychological truths ever discovered. People can survive pain. They struggle to survive emptiness. That's why discipline creates peace. Not because discipline is exciting, but because discipline reconnects you to meaning. A disciplined person trusts themselves, and self-trust changes everything. When you consistently keep promises to yourself, your mind becomes quieter, stronger, less ashamed, because self-respect is not built through affirmations. It's built through evidence. Evidence that you can rely on yourself, that you continue even when uncomfortable, that you remain steady when emotions fluctuate, that you do not abandon yourself every time life becomes difficult. And life will become difficult, repeatedly. No philosophy can remove suffering entirely. Not stoicism, not psychology, not success. But wisdom can teach you how to carry suffering differently. That is the real transformation. Not becoming emotionless, but becoming resilient, calm under pressure, able to endure discomfort without collapsing internally, able to maintain direction even when motivation disappears. Because motivation always disappears eventually. Always. The people who build meaningful lives understand this. So they stop depending on temporary emotional energy. Instead, they design systems, rituals, routines, structures, not because they are robots, because they understand human weakness. And mature wisdom is not pretending weakness doesn't exist. It's building a life that protects you from your own self-destruction. That's real intelligence, not motivational excitement. Strategic self-awareness, understanding your patterns deeply enough to interrupt them. Because if you don't consciously shape your habits, your environment will shape them for you. And modern environments are designed to destroy focus, destroy patience, destroy depth. Everything today encourages impulsiveness, fast dopamine, fast entertainment, fast validation. But meaningful transformation requires slowness, silence, repetition, which is why so few people experience true peace anymore. Peace requires internal order. And internal order requires disciplined habits, even small ones, especially small ones. A 10-minute walk, a consistent bedtime, reading instead of endlessly consuming noise, sitting quietly without distraction, speaking to yourself with honesty instead of contempt. These seem insignificant until years pass. Then suddenly the difference becomes enormous. One person slowly becomes calmer, healthier, wiser. Another becomes bitter, reactive, exhausted. Small repeated actions create radically different destinies. That's the terrifying beauty of habits. And perhaps this is what Jim Rohn truly understood. Motivation feels powerful in the beginning, but beginnings are easy. Everyone loves beginnings. New Year's resolutions, fresh starts, exciting plans. The real challenge is continuation. Continuing when progress is invisible. Continuing when nobody applauds. Continuing after disappointment. Continuing through grief. Continuing after failure. Continuing when life becomes emotionally heavy. That is where identity is forged. Not during inspiration, during repetition. And strangely enough, the people who master consistency often become quieter, less performative, less desperate for validation, because they no longer need external applause to continue. They understand something most people never learn. Your life is shaped most by what you do repeatedly in private. Not publicly, privately. The habits nobody sees. The thoughts nobody hears. The standards you maintain alone. That private world eventually becomes your external reality. Which means, every ordinary day matters more than you think. Every repeated action matters. Every small decision is casting a vote toward the person you are becoming. Even now. Especially now. And maybe that's what you needed to hear tonight. Not another dramatic speech. Not fake positivity. Not unrealistic promises. Just the truth. That change is slower than you hoped, but more possible than you think. That discipline is difficult, but regret is heavier. That motivation may disappear tomorrow, but habits can still carry you forward. Quietly, steadily, one day at a time. And maybe your life does not need a complete reinvention right now. Maybe it simply needs one honest habit. One repeated act of self-respect. One decision to stop abandoning yourself. Because the future version of you, the calmer one, the stronger one, the wiser one, is not created in one dramatic moment. He is built quietly, daily, repeatedly, in silence, long before the world ever notices. So tonight, when the noise fades again, and you are left alone with your thoughts, ask yourself one question. Not, what do I feel motivated to do? But, what kind of person am I becoming through repetition? Because your answer to that question is shaping your entire life. Even now, especially now,